Hi, and welcome to the Nerds Now Playing podcast, where we talk about all things nerdy, including movies, video games, entertainment. And this is recorded in the Feely Creative Podcast Studio in Salina, Kansas. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Devin. Now, you may notice that we only have one main camera today. That is our wide angle, because the rest of the studio has kind of been torn down for a streaming event this weekend, this Easter weekend. But Devin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good.
Excellent. Have you been watching anything this week? What have you been up to?
Well, I have been watching some stuff, Tim. Recently, this last week, the show Yellow Jackets, well, a couple weeks ago now, but Yellow Jackets on Showtime has started up again, and we just finished episode 2 of that show.
Nice.
And that show has a lot of like dark themes and mystery going on with it. It's kind of like a darker version of Lost, maybe. So we're still kind of trying to figure out some of the mysteries in that show. It is about a girls' soccer team that gets they crash land in a mountainous forest region, and they get stuck out there for, I believe, like a year and a half before they're finally found and saved. But the story goes into the future selves of them too, in present day. So the crash landing of that stuff takes place in like 1995 or somewhere in the mid 90s, and then the flash forward, it takes also place in present day, which would be, I think, 2022.
Oh wow!
Because that show came out last year, I believe. So we're watching that. Very fun show for us to watch. Well, I say fun, but it's a very dark show.
Yeah.
But we've been enjoying that a lot.
What's that on?
That is on Showtime.
Oh, okay. Because I've been really interested in that one, but I don't have Showtime to watch it. So
it'd be worth checking out, and I mean, maybe subscribe to Showtime for a couple months and then binge it, because it's a very good, strong show with good characters and like this not heavy-handed mystery, but it's very interesting to see what is going on and what's going to happen, what's the end game here. But we've been really enjoying that show. And recently I've been rewatching the John Wick movies.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've still only seen the first one. Eventually I may watch the others, but it depends on when I have time.
It's been a while since I watched through them all again, and I'm not sure why I'm so surprised, but I just finished the first 2 movies, and having just recently watched the 4th one in theaters, and I don't know why, but I was surprised by how violent it is, even though the whole movie is just action violence and gun violence and things like that. But I'm not sure why I was surprised by the level of violence, but the movies are great. I'm not saying it made it any worse, but those movies are just so crazy with how they up the action and the ante with their sequences from movie to movie. So I'm about ready to start watching the 3rd one, but I needed a little bit of a break from that high adrenaline movie. And we took a break last night too and watched The Land Before Time.
Oh, I love that movie. It's been a long time since I've watched it, but I'm a huge Don Bluth fan. So that movie, amongst a lot of others we were talking about earlier today, a lot of those early 90s, late 80s kids movies are very traumatic. But I still love them.
Yeah, and we were looking for, it was kind of late in the night, and we were looking for something to watch, and that movie is 1 hour and 6 minutes long.
I believe it.
Which I was kind of surprised by that. As a kid, I just remember it. I don't really think about movie lengths, I guess.
Yeah.
But so it was a nice, quick watch, but we had so much fun revisiting that movie. It's the animation and that's so great. The music's great. And, we were kind of like thinking about how, when we watched it as kids, how it made us feel. Because it's a story of loss and survival and friendship. And so really good movie, and one that we're wondering if our nephews had watched or not.
Oh, yeah,
so we would make sure we introduce it to as many people as possible. So
absolutely, you should.
So
do you have a favorite character?
Yeah, I think. Do I have a favorite character?
Is it Littlefoot?
Well, Littlefoot's good. I kind of liked Spike as he just goes along with whatever, and And
He's just there to eat and have a good time.
yep, that's right. And I was commenting when I was watching it because he hatches from an egg in the
Oh
movie,
yeah.
and with on day 2 of hatching from that egg, he is saving Littlefoot and everybody, or helping save everyone from the
Oh
tar
yeah.
pits and
I
stuff, and
remember
they're
that section.
they're running from T-Rex dinosaur, and
From
like it's
Sharptooth,
like
isn't it?
Sharptooth, yep.
Yeah.
And like, so this is only like day 2 of even being alive in existence, and he's
It's impressive.
and Spike's already going through all this stuff. So kudos to you, Spike.
Yeah. My favorite's always been Petrie. The little pterodactyl.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just like his mannerisms and the voice, but like I don't know. I also have something for like flying dinosaurs. Like I've always liked the pterosaurs. I think they're probably my favorite. I mean, don't get me wrong. I also love long necks, but I don't know, something like, I mean, if you look at like Godzilla, like Rodan is one of my favorite characters. So there's something fun with that. As for myself this week, I haven't had a lot of time to start watching some stuff, but I have started watching the new Muppets show that came out a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like a mockumentary style show, kind of almost like The Office, but it's set in this situation where Miss Piggy has a like late night talk show, kind of like David Letterman or any of the other comedians nowadays, and she is just as much of a pain as she always was. In fact, more so. And Kermit is like the showrunner, the one who's like in charge of everything. And they have like a writer's room kind of that are coming with pitches for jokes and all this other stuff. And it's set in this kind of very, like in a very cynical way. Um, like the first episode, you find out that like Kermit and Piggy broke up a while ago. And so like he's been dating another pig, and he makes a comment that's like,
Oh my gosh.
I like pigs. Like it's actually really great. And like Pepe the shrimp, or King Prawn, is a stable character, which I really love. One of the newer additions since like the 90s. And so far I've only gotten like 3 or 4 episodes in, and sadly it only got like 1 season. I think it's only 16 episodes, but
Wow.
it's been really good so far. I've been enjoying it.
I remember watching well, so you said this is a newer Muppet show, or
Yeah, it came out several years ago after the Muppets movie with Jason Segel.
and was it called The Muppet Show?
This one is just called The Muppets, I think.
The Muppets. I can't quite remember. I know there was a classic Muppet Show,
Yeah,
wasn't there?
that one actually is called The Muppet Show.
Okay,
So this one's just called The Muppets.
I see.
But it involves a lot of those classic characters, and obviously the voices have kind of changed slightly because they don't have the original, or they don't have all the original voice actors and puppeteers. But it is on Disney Plus if you're interested in watching it. Only 16 episodes, like I said. So a little sad that they don't have more. But again, I'm not that far into it. But I'm looking forward to watching more. Aside from that, I started playing a little bit of Destiny 2 this week. One of my friends, I tried it a long time ago and just found that I couldn't really get into it, because that's a game where like you have to play with friends if you want to advance at all. And I tend to be a very like solo player. Like most of the things I play are solo campaign or had that ability. And well, there is kind of that in Destiny, I guess, but they really want you to go on like raids and stuff. And so 2 of my gaming group have started to get back into it. And so they're like, "Do you want to play?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll go along. Like, I'm willing to try new games and stuff." So
now that game is made by Bungie.
Yes,
that you made the Halo series.
Yeah.
I've only seen people play Destiny. What is it about, like, overall? What kind of game is that?
It's very much a first-person shooter style, FPS style game. As far as like the backstory and lore, I can't tell you much because I don't know a whole lot about it. All I know is that there's this big orb thing called the Traveler, which gives you this little mechanical floaty thing that I think is called a ghost. That helps give you like your waypoints and like your objectives and all this stuff, and keeps track of it. But it plays a lot like Halo in terms of like the gameplay style. So which I like. I've played all the Halo games except for the RTS ones, but so I like the gameplay style.
Is that a game are they still making new content for it?
I think so. I'm pretty sure they're still like doing season passes and stuff.
Okay.
They just actually one of the main characters, or one of the guys who voiced the main character, passed away recently. Lance Reddick was like a major character in the game. And I guess he's gone now, unfortunately. But so I don't know much more about the lore of the game than those things. But so far it's been kind of fun just going through the tutorial stuff and getting reacquainted with that system. And apparently, surprisingly, the character back when I started, because I initially played it on the PS4, and that has transferred over to. I'm playing it on the Xbox right now because it is free to play.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, they've made it free to play. I think it's probably free to play on all platforms now. So it's been interesting. I probably will dive a little bit more into that at some point, maybe this weekend. But I'm still trying to get through Danganronpa V3. It's the last one of the series that I need to finish. So hopefully I'll get through those. As far as anything else I've been doing, I have, in anticipation of the movie that we were talking about today, which is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves, which we saw this week.
That's right.
I started kind of rewatching the original D&D cartoon from the 80s.
Oh.
Which I think it has around 30 episodes. It ran for 3 seasons.
Interesting. I didn't even know there was one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if it existed in the 80s, there's pretty much a cartoon about it. So it... all of it is on YouTube, by the way. It is just called Dungeons and Dragons. But it's back when it first started, so it, like the classes are a little different, or like the characters that you play as, or could play at the time. But basically, it starts off like the intro is these kids are going to this, they go to this amusement park, and they take a Dungeons and Dragons themed roller coaster ride, which somehow like propels them into the world of D&D. And the dungeon master assigns them different roles. So like wizard, barbarian, in that case I think acrobat, and there's a couple others. But it's interesting. Like they have like one main villain called Venger, which voiced by Peter Cullen, who also voiced Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
And actually, didn't he voice Eeyore as well?
Couldn't tell you that.
I think he did. I could be wrong. But voiced by Peter Cullen, which he's always a good time. And I have only got a chance to watch the first couple episodes. It's campy, but it's fun. So it's worth a watch if you're interested in it at all. But so that kind of leads into our mini topic today. Since we're going to be talking about the D&D movie, Devin, what is your experience with D&D?
My experience with D&D is very limited. I was shown D&D by someone in college while in their parents' basement for several hours in college with my roommate who I just met because it was the first couple of days of college, and he had a whole table filled with like figurines and things like it was actually a massive table, and we were kind of like overwhelmed with how many figurines this particular person had. But that was several years ago. So So I really know nothing. I don't know, because he was telling us that day, but that was like 15 years ago, and
gotcha.
I don't really remember. So my experience is like nothing, 0%.
Well, dang. My experience, I've played several times. I've DM'd a couple times, or as a dungeon master, I've run the game. I mean, there are a lot of other systems aside from D&D. D&D just happens to be like one of the most popular ones since the 80s. But there's also Warhammer 40K, which is a huge one. I've never gotten into that one. I've a friend of mine who's like super into the lore. He's been collecting minifigures and painting them and selling them. But there's that one. There is actually, interestingly, a Star Trek style tabletop RPG. Like it has books and stuff and all. I've never gotten a chance to try that one. I kind of want to as a Star Trek fan. But I think there's even a Star Wars one out there. But there's also there's 2 or 3 different Lord of the Rings style ones. Actually, our friend Gus has up in his office. He has the whole set. I think it's just called the One Ring. And you can play as a halfling or like an orc or an elf or all this kind of stuff. So we've been wanting to try that one for a while, but just haven't gotten around to it. But my experience, so I really like D&D. I think, if you like tabletop games, it is, in my experience, a more immersive experience. Because, I mean, yes, there are rules and there are dice and stuff that go with it, but what it really comes down to is the storytelling. And that's what keeps it more interesting than just like these base mechanics that most games have. And so for me, that's why I like it. I love being able to immerse myself in the story and as a character. And like there have been times, like a while back, one of the campaigns that I was involved in, I was playing as a Tabaxi monk. Tabaxi are a feline, like humanoid feline race, kind of like the Khajiit from Skyrim.
Mm.
So I was playing as a monk, and my character and another character started becoming like really, really tight, like as a like friend wise in the campaign. And near the end of the campaign, I asked our DM to do me a favor and kill my character off because I wanted that the emotional stakes to really like be there. And so another character that became really attached to me, like I had the opportunity to like fulfill what my personal quest was, and I didn't know it at the time because like my personal quest in that thing was to gain the specific knowledge for the deity that I was following, and he basically gave me the option of you, or this other being gave me the option of you can either get what you need to fulfill your quest, or you can help your friends. And I thought it was a trick, so I denied what my main goal was to save my fellow compatriots in the game, and the D&D was taken aback by that because you can never predict what your players are going to do as a dungeon master. And so I did that, and he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yes." And so like because I did that, my D&D like appeared in front of me. He's like, "Well, you failed spectacularly. You're dead," and then basically smote me. And it was very emotional for that other character. And in fact, there was another one I was playing as a character that Elowen Freist was her name. She had a German accent the entire time. She was a cleric, and there was a point where I don't remember exactly what happened other than as a cleric, you're like the healer of the group.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what her ultimate goal was, but there came a point where there was this massive like self-doubt for her. And she, like, I broke down in character because she, as a character, as a cleric, she didn't want to hurt anyone anymore, and she didn't know what to do, and it was just such like I'm going to use the word submersive again, immersive. Thank you. A very immersive experience, like breaking down in character. Like as an actor, I love that aspect of D&D. Now, not everyone has to do that. Like if you don't have to go hard into role playing if you don't want to, but for me, that's one of the things that I really love about it. But so as a treat for you, who has never played D&D, I'm going to run you through a very quick D&D encounter, basically.
Okay, all right.
So you are playing. I've given you a pre-generated character sheet.
You do a human fighter.
Yes.
Like with the number 1. What is the number 1?
That means that you are a level 1 fighter. Well, I can't skip and give you a level 20. That would be
1.2 fighter.
Okay, we'll give you 1.2. And you have named your character Neved.
That's right, Neved.
Ah, yes. What a clever anagram for your name. Not really anagram, but you know. Okay, so pardon me, sorry. So it says on your background sheet that you were a soldier. So you've traveled to foreign lands, you've led troops into danger, fought wars under the banners of different commanders, yet you craved something more out of life and resigned your commission. Now you are out on your own, living by your wits, taking orders from no one. That's who you are.
Sounds correct.
That sounds like you in real life?
Yeah, that's me in real life.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, let's start. We'll just kind of take this slowly as we go along, and I will do my best to help you since you are inexperienced.
That's okay. All right. So, I am Neved, the fighter.
Yes. Neved, the human fighter.
Who's quitting fighting, but still won't take crap for anyone.
That's right. He survives as a soldier of fortune.
Okay. All right. So what do we do here to get this thing going here?
All right. You find yourself coming to in a dank, dark cavern. Everything around you, save for the faint glow of a light in a room somewhat adjacent to yours. What do you do? Or what would you like to do?
So I come into a dark, dank cavern.
You awaken, basically.
I awaken.
You come to.
I see. Okay, so I awaken into a dank cavern, and I see a faint glow.
You see a faint glow coming from an adjacent, kind of similar like room almost.
Well, I guess I approach that room to investigate.
Okay. make a perception check for me. So roll your d20.
Okay. I'm going to roll this D20. I just recently learned it's called a D20, so let's see how this goes. All right, that came up 5.
5, okay.
Which I think is a great number.
Oh, it's so good. Let's see. So your wisdom in your character sheet is 0, which means you have no modifiers. So you
That's
coming
good,
into
right?
this room, or nearing to the room, you're still really groggy. You're coming into this. Nothing has really hit you yet. You're not really sensing a whole lot other than the sound of faint, shrill voices coming from the room. You enter the room. How would you like to enter it?
With my sword drawn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Already taking that approach. All right. You burst into the room. Before you stands 2 goblins. And they see you immediately as they're talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out, what they're going to do for the night.
Like, I don't know. I might go out for some entertainment. Maybe I'll kill a couple of humans. I don't know.
And they hear you coming in, sword in hand, and go,
What? What the hell? How are you still alive? You're awake already? Get him!
I need you to go ahead and go ahead and roll your d20 again for me. So to roll for initiative.
All right, that's a 20.
You got a nat 20? Oh my gosh, that means you go first. So let me go ahead and pull out I have got the stats here.
Yeah, I'm not groggy enough to go not to go first.
That's right. All right. So, if I didn't move my mic. All right. So you have the first attack. Now you have a couple different weapons. You have your sword, which you already have out. You do have a shield, and I believe you have a pike and a javelin. So that means that you do have some ability for range combat. In this case, you are foregoing the range. So I assume you're going to try and attack one?
Well, I think I was correct, first of all, to have sword drawn. I mean, if their options are go out for some entertainment or kill humans, that's quite the scale of choices they could make.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to lunge at them with my sword.
Okay. Well, you can only attack one at a time. So go ahead and roll your d20 for me, and we'll see if you hit.
13.
You got a 13. All right.
Unlucky for them.
And this is on your sword, which it's a +3 sword, I believe. Or no. Let's see. Attack, 5 foot. Okay, so if you hit. So you've a +5 to attack with your sword. And they have a armor class of 15. What did you roll?
I rolled a 13.
Okay, so you definitely hit. Go ahead and roll a 1d8 for me. That next to it, other side. That one. Go ahead and roll that for me.
Okay. D8. Green rolled 5.
All right, and that actually has a +3. So you've done 8 points of damage to that goblin.
Of course I did, stupid goblin.
Which actually, you did 8. I said you did 8 damage?
Yes, did.
You kill him immediately. He goes down without a fight and just... The other one becomes enraged because you just killed his mate.
How dare you! We were discussing what we were going to do this evening. You human monster! I will destroy you!
Sounds like an elderly goblin. That shouldn't be a problem.
Wow, someone's a little cocky. All right, well, he lunges at you with his mace, and he attempts to hit you, and let's see if he does. There's my d20. That is a 9. And he has... I apologize, this may take me a moment. Let's see, since it's 6 on skills. Or I guess he's actually using a scimitar. My apologies. He's a +4 to attack. And what is your armor class from your sheet?
Armor class is 18.
Okay, so he's a 9 plus... My apologies. +4 is not enough to hit you. So in his rage, he blindly swings at you and misses and hits the ground instead. It is your move.
My move would be to bludgeon him with my shield.
Interesting. A bashing attack. All right. Go ahead and roll for me.
The D20?
Yes, please.
I like to add insult to injury. 8.
Ooh. And I'll say that your shield, we'll say it's a +2 for hitting, even though it's not really there. So that would give you a 10, which is not enough. So you attempt to hit him, but you forgot in your groggy state how heavy a shield is. And you attempt and you swing and you just kind of immediately lunge forward and you miss. And you're kind of staggered. So you'll have to attempt to get back up. He is ready again, and he's going to attempt to attack you this time again with his scimitar. And he rolls, let's see, a 12 plus 4. That would be an 18 in your armor class.
I'm 18 for armor class.
Okay, so I believe if it ties, the defender wins. So he manages to lunge after you, but does it in a way that right as you're coming up with your shield, he hits the shield and does no damage. It is your turn again.
Okay. Then I will just strike him with my sword.
Okay.
Quit playing around.
All right, go ahead and roll for me.
16. No, 19.
19. That is definitely enough to hit him. Go ahead and roll a d8 for me. Yep.
6.
6, and your sword has a +5, I believe. Yes, +5, so that's 9. Let's see, 6. No, sorry, that's the hit. Never mind. You rolled a 6, you said?
I rolled a 6. Yep.
Okay. And you don't have any bonus. Oh, it's +3. Okay, so yeah, you rolled a 9 basically, and you have slain this one. Would you like to describe how you have slain it?
I thrust my sword forward, piercing in between his eyes, and having my sword go all the way through his skull out the back end.
Ooh,
Yeah.
brutal. All right, you have won between these two measly goblins. The other one stuck to the end of your sword as you plunge it through its eyes. It immediately goes cross-eyed, looking at the sword as its mouth gapes open and blood spurts out all over you. You pull the sword back in a whipping motion, and the goblin flings off of it back against the wall, and kind of splats as it then slowly hits the ground. Would you like to loot the bodies, or would you like to do anything in this room?
I'd like to just give out a big yawn and do a stretch.
All right. Go ahead and roll for me with a stretch.
Okay. Is that the D20?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead and we'll make this a. Let's see.
Oh no, it's a 4.
Oh no. We'll make this a athletics check. Most DMs may not do this, but I'm going to because I want to torture you. So let's see. Athletics is strength, which you have a +3, so that means that gives you a 7. You stretch, and it's not like super effective, but it helps kind of take you out of your grogginess a little bit. Although you do notice a little bit of pain in your shoulder from that one night out a few weeks ago where you got really plastered and sang and dove off of a table in an attempt to crowd surf, and it failed spectacularly.
Is this the time for a little flashback of that?
If you would like to. Would you like to sing and describe yourself doing it?
Yes, I'm on the table and I'm singing some sailor's song that I picked up, but I don't remember the words very well because I am so drunk. But
so you're kind of slurring.
But I was trying to dance so I can impress a woman on the far side of the room. But then I saw somebody else that I recognized who owes me money from across the tavern, and that's when I dove off the table, but face planted right onto the floor.
And immediately passed out.
For hours.
Oh, yeah.
As everyone else drank and danced around me.
Sounds like a very fitting evening for Nevad, the human fighter. You come to that, and you remember that, and you think to yourself, man, I'm an idiot. But you know what? It was a good time. So maybe if I make it out of this, I'll do it again. So you start making your way. You notice in the back of this large cavern that there is a small little hallway. Would you like to go down the hallway?
Yes, I'll go down this hallway.
Okay. Go ahead and make a perception check for me.
Okay.
So roll your d20.
All right. I'm going to roll this d20. An 11.
All right. And what is your wisdom modifier?
Wisdom modifier. Let's take a look.
Oh, it looks like so it'd be the one in parentheses, which is a 0. So you have an 11?
Yep.
All right. We'll say that as you start going down this hallway, and there are torches kind of along it, so you can kind of vaguely see, but you hear some shifting above you, and you just manage to hear something detach itself from the ceiling as you kind of bolt forward in an attempt to get away from it. What has dropped down is, I have to find it here, what's called a piercer, which is a slug-like entity with 4 fangs on his kind of gaping mouth.
Oh, no.
1 large eye, and some little teeny little claws that help cling to the ceiling. This is what it looks like.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. So you have narrowly avoided this thing latching onto you.
How large is it compared to me?
It is pretty big. It's a medium monstrosity. So we'll say it's probably half your body size.
Okay.
So it's pretty big. It cannot move very quickly at all. So what would you like to do? It's just kind of laying on the ground right now.
Well, I just woke up, so I think I'd like to use the restroom.
Okay.
Which I will make the hallway my restroom.
Okay. You proceed to do this as this piercer attempts to like edge itself closer to you while you're doing this. But being a human and having legs, you are much faster than it and manage to get away and even insult it by relieving some of your own waste onto it.
Nice.
Would you like to continue down the hallway?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead and make another perception check for me.
All right. Perception check happening. Ooh, 8.
Ooh, that is not very good.
I
And
think
your
it's-
wisdom is 0.
I think it's great.
You go along, but you start to feel something crawling up your leg.
Uh-oh. It's not that thing, is it?
It is not a piercer, no. It is, in fact, a crawling claw,
Uh-oh.
which is basically a cut-off hand that is making its way up along your leg and trying to make its way up towards your throat. Go ahead and roll initiative for me.
Okay.
We'll see if you... Well, actually, I guess technically it did surprise you by already being attached to you. So it's going to attempt to attack you. We'll say it got a surprise attack. That is a 7. This would be like an unarmed strike. Let's see. +3 would be a 10, and your armor class is higher than that. It attempts to go to attack you as like it's clawing its way up, and it can't make its way through your chainmail. So it's just kind of like rudely poking at you as it kind of like crawls up you. What would you like to do?
I think I'd like to just deal with it.
Okay. In what way?
I'll just keep walking down that hallway.
So you ignore it.
Because it's my friend now.
Big person. All right. As you continue to the hallway, it's still trying to climb up you. It's gonna let's say by the time you reach the end of the hallway, it has made its way to your shoulder, and it's going to attempt to choke you anyway. And it rolled a critical failure. It rolled a nat 1. So it attempts to lunge at your throat, and it just like it can't seem to get over your collar, like this little hood you have that protects you, and it's just kind of hanging there, like just gripping it and attempting to like one finger at a time, like lunge up, but it keeps slipping down. So it's now you're just kind of wearing it like a tie.
Great.
Would you like to do anything else with it?
I would like to tie the hand as a tie, the better secure it to me, because it's now part of my clothing.
Okay. Go ahead and roll for me.
D20?
Yes, please.
All right, a 20.
You, there's no need for me to even look at the stats. You are incredibly successful with this. You manage to not only tied into a tie with the fingers somehow, but you've made a double Windsor knot with the fingers. And it's just, it has accepted its fate as part of your clothing. As the bone just sits here and lays down this way as like the part of your tie. You are now known as Navid, the hand wearer. So go ahead and you make your way further down this cavern, and you come to a really large room. And in this room, you see a large chest. Would you like to start making your way towards it?
Yeah, I'd like to tighten my tie a little bit and then start walking towards that chest.
You do so, and as you start walking towards the chest, you notice a shadowy figure emerges from the background and starts kind of forming itself and molding itself in a way that looks very similar to you.
Oh. Is this a shadow Neved?
It is, in fact, a shadow Neved. It is a doppelganger.
Uh-oh.
It looks exactly like you, but slightly darker. And in terms of like the depths of its soul, like you can just tell this is a dark being. What would you like to do?
Oh man. I would like to ask it what it's doing here.
It asks you back in a mocking tone.
I want to tell it that that's not very nice.
He looks at you and says, "Well, that's not very nice."
And I want to say, hey, that's what I said.
And he says, "Hey, that's what I said."
And I said, but no, really, that is what I said.
"No, really, that is what I said." He says back to you.
And I say, are you copying me?
And he says, "Are you copying me?"
And I say, are you copying me?
And he says, "Are you copying me?"
And I say, I'm stupid.
And he says, "You're stupid."
And I said, that's not what I said.
And getting annoyed with this conversation, he begins to just slowly make his way towards you, drawing his own sword, and pulls it out and lunges after you, making the first attack. And he rolls a 3. And even with what he has, that is not going to be enough to hit you. So he attempts to do like a similar move to you, having kind of read your thoughts and reading you. And he lunges forward like you did with the last goblin and misses entirely, like way past your head. What would you like to do?
I would like to confirm to him that he is in fact an idiot.
By doing what?
By I draw my sword and I slash at his butt.
Go ahead and roll for me.
10.
And let's see. You get a +5 with your attack, I believe, which would be 15, which is just enough, which is a little over enough to hit him. So you slash at his buttocks. In which fashion? Up or down? Or up and down or side to side?
Well, can I change it from a slash to I thrust into his butt?
You may. So you thrust with your sword, and you penetrate him from behind. He screams wildly, but in a way that's a little uncomfortable to you, because while it is painful, he weirdly enjoys it.
Oh.
It is now his turn, as he attempts to, after you have removed your sword, he's going to lunge forward, and he's going to attempt to whip around and attack you with his fists. He has rolled, let's see, a 6, an unnatural 20. So he was around in pain, and you find it very strange that you're looking into your own face, and you punch you, doing, let's see, 1d6 of damage. He does 6 points of damage to you, punching you straight in the face, enough to even break your nose.
Oh, that's not nice.
It is not nice. So you take 6 points of damage for that. Go ahead and write that down.
Okay.
Just to make sure. Which is about half your health. He's not happy. It is now your turn. I should mention, I will allow, you do have a few bottles of healing potions on you. You do also have a bonus action, which you can do once during this, which would allow you to also heal.
Mm.
What would you like to do?
Let's see. Let's see. He just punched me in the nose, breaking my nose.
Yep.
That's going to be very painful. Let's see. What could I do?
Well, you've still got your weapons.
That's right. I think so. What I want to do is, which I'm gonna wipe the blood off of my face.
Okay.
And with the blood on my fist, I'm gonna ball my fist up and I'm gonna punch him in the nose.
Okay. Go ahead and roll for me.
9.
Let's see. With an unarmed strike. Let's see. What does your character say? We'll just say that you have a +2 with your fist, which would only be 11, which is not enough to hit him. So in your pain, and you're fully awake now, definitely. Now that he's punched you in your face, but you're like holding it with your other hand, going, "Ah, my nose, you jerk!" And you attempt to hit him with your fist, and like you do hit him in the face, but not with enough force. Like you just kind of like, just like barely hit his face, and he just kind of looks at you and starts laughing. Pathetic. And he attempts to grab you by the throat. And he fails. He attempts to grab you, and his depth perception is still weirdly off. So he tries, and he just like slightly misses your throat and grabs here. And he thinks he's grabbed your throat, but he hasn't. He's missed, and it's like an illusion to him. What would you like to do?
I'd like to swing my sword.
Okay.
In his direction.
All right. Go ahead and roll a d20 for me.
Oh crap! It's a 3.
You attempt to swing, and you're both just doing piss poor at this fight. Neither of you, like, he's hit you once, and somehow you just can't seem to hit him, and he just starts laughing harder at you, to the point where he has to sit down because he's laughing so hard, and that will be his turn. He will sit down to laugh at you.
Okay.
Your turn.
Okay. So now what I want to do is I'm going to throw my Windsor tie hand at him.
Okay.
to attack him.
All right.
And hopefully have it land on his face.
All right.
To gouge his eyes out.
I approve.
Shoot, I think that's an 8. It's an 8.
It's an 8. You have I'll give you a go ahead and make an athletics check for me as well.
A what check?
Athletics. So roll your d20. It'd be a dex thing.
I see dex of 9, maybe.
It'd be what's in parentheses.
-1.
So you have -1 in dexterity. But also so you tried to throw it. Go ahead and roll for me for a throw.
Okay, I'm gonna roll for a throw. 18.
Okay, so even with that -1, you managed to throw it, and we'll go ahead and take your previous roll for the actual attack. Or actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and I'll just have you roll again for the actual attack. So it does latch onto its face, almost like a face hugger from the Alien series.
19.
And it uses 2 of its fingers after it's like coming out of its knot stage, and it like stretches. And then it uses its long nails and it goes into the eyes, and this thing just begins shrieking to the point where it can't see. It's furiously swinging around in this cavern, and it is running around blindly and happens to like run around in such a fury that it bangs itself into one of the walls and knocks itself out. Your hand tie slowly pulls its fingers out of the eyes and starts crawling back to you. Its way back up to your chest. And just kind of... It can't tie itself into that position, but it'll just rest there, happily, just along with you. Congratulations, you have beaten the doppelganger. The chest lies before you.
Well, I'm going to fist bump my hand tie.
Nice.
And I'm going to go open up that chest.
All right. You open the chest. Inside is a bit of armor, a dark green tunic with a weirdly floppy hat, and as well as a new shield, which has the crest of a bird and 3 triangles above it.
Oh.
As soon as you pick that up, you take a step forward, and you accidentally step onto a hidden piece in the ground that interacts and opens up a door into another corridor. What would you like to do?
I'd like to just go on in that corridor.
All right. You go into the corridor, and inside is a sword in a pedestal. You approach it, and you begin to pull it out. And as soon as you do, you can feel the intense magic from the sword. And inlaid in the blade says that it is the sword that will seal away the darkness. You begin to pull it, and then you feel yourself losing consciousness.
Uh-oh.
And that is where we will end.
Nice.
I did attempt to make it slightly Zelda-themed for you.
That sounds like it. I feel bad now for relieving myself on those poor things.
It's okay. Link would totally do that.
But I do enjoy my new tie.
Excellent.
That was part.
So, being your first taste of D&D, not necessarily typical, but how did you enjoy it?
That's fun. I'm gonna always probably want to make things a little goofy.
Oh yeah, and that's part of the fun of it.
So, but I was glad I was able to then make my hand a tie and then have him be my buddy too. So
that was great. I could not have anticipated that you would do that. And that is, like I said before, that is one of the things that I find super fun about D&D is like, as a DM, like you can never predict things. Like that genuinely made me laugh. Making the hand a tie.
Yeah.
The fact that you rolled a natural 20 on that is incredible.
Yep.
Having experienced this, would you think you would ever actually play with a group of people?
Maybe. At least give it a try. So yeah.
Nice.
Because I would try to divert the game into some goofy realms that they probably wouldn't have wanted to otherwise.
Well, I appreciate that. All right, well, we will be right back, and we will get into our actual review of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. All right, and we are back, and let's go ahead and dive into our review of Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Amongst Thieves. So to start off with this movie, I'll go ahead and read the synopsis. A charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embark on an epic quest to retrieve a long-lost relic, but their charming adventure goes dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. So this movie came out this year, came out last weekend, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
And we got a chance to go see it in theaters. This is directed by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. John Daly, I didn't realize who it was when I was first looking at this. So he has been an actor in the past, actually.
Okay.
Did you ever watch Freaks and Geeks?
I did.
So he's the one who plays
Love that show.
Sam Weir, I think is the character. So he was one of the kids, like the really young one.
Okay.
Who was playing D&D with the friends. I believe he's also on Bones as a psychiatrist later on.
Haven't seen Bones.
Career. I really liked Bones. I haven't finished like the entire series, but so John Daly has been and is a nerd. I was looking. Actually, they did a trailer recently or a commercial for the D&D movie with having his little group of friends from Freaks and Geeks like come back and actually kind of play for a very, very short commercial.
Okay.
Which is a great cameo thing.
That's cool.
So I really enjoyed that. So this movie, budget of $150 million US dollars. Opening weekend, $38.5 million domestically, $33 million internationally. So, I mean, it's not fully up to the full budget yet, but I imagine by the end of the run, it will have made up its budget.
And yeah, at least I hope so. We'll get into the movie a little bit because I thought this movie was really good. So I think once people kind of start watching even outside of the theater, I feel like it's going to get an audience after release. Like the people are going to find it, discover it, and probably like this movie a lot.
Do you think it'll become a cult classic?
Well, I mean, I guess you never really know, but I don't see why not. So yeah, we saw it in theaters, and I thought this movie was really great. Tim just shared the D&D experience with me just a little bit. I have never actually played it myself, and so I don't really know much about Dungeons and Dragons or a lot of the possibilities with it, or any of the characters that you could either come up with or the classes of characters. But having said that, I just went into it thinking of it as any other kind of fantasy film with magic and all that kind of stuff, because I've watched a number of shows like that already, so that's not really a big deal. But so just on terms of the story and the visuals and a lot of the production quality and stuff, I thought this movie was really great. Like, I was surprised, first of all, how funny it was. And I thought there's going to be some humor in it from the trailers and stuff, but this movie's like genuinely pretty funny and pretty clever, I think, with how it does its humor and the jokes. And I really liked the characters in this movie too. The movie starts out with the main character. I think he goes by Bard, doesn't he?
So he is a bard. Edgin.
Okay.
Is Chris Pine's character,
and it starts with him trying to state his case so he could be freed from the prison that they're in.
Yeah,
and so we have to get a little bit of backstory injected into why he's there, but I really like how it's kind of done with the humor of it. He's hoping for one of the other judges who isn't present at his hearing to show up, and he keeps mentioning that throughout his backstory, that he's trying to explain that he's not really a bad person. He's just done what he had to do with the circumstances that he's been given. But it's just really funny how they pepper in humor into that, so that it's not like you go along with the backstory in such an entertaining way. So I thought the setup was really, really funny, because you're being dropped into this world. There's probably a lot to be explained, maybe.
Oh yeah.
But they don't really. It's not very heavy-handed on a lot of the explaining, which I like. It focuses mostly, I think, on the characters and their perspectives and stuff. So I think for me, that was just such an easy way to just get into this. It didn't really bog it down with like lore or names of cities or anything like that. So I thought it was a pretty easy way to get into the movie, and I thought it was really great with the characters, and the action sequences also stood out with me. And I had just seen John Wick 4 in the theaters, and that movie has some amazing action stuff in there. But I was watching this, and I thought this had some awesome action too, in terms of for some reason, I was thinking about Marvel movies a lot. And
I can see that.
now, obviously, this is not a Marvel movie, but I feel like the way this action and the visuals and the humor is in this movie, I feel like this is what I wish most Marvel movies would be. So I think this has like such a high standard of quality on what I would want these types of movies. I mean, it is a big budget movie, lots of visual effects, but everything's like servicing the story so well. And we had recently talked about Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
And I didn't necessarily like, these are totally different movies, but I just feel like this movie has that fun creativity on display. Because the way they like transition from scenes sometimes, like they could have just done normal transitions or cuts and stuff, but they really elevate everything in a very unique way in this movie. So I don't think everything's like has such polish to it. I thought
I would agree.
And it's really been refreshing to see a movie that has just having watched Marvel movies so much, we're on movie 20 something with
Yeah, at this
that
point.
whole MCU, and so some of those characters we've sat with and lived with for a number of hours already, and watching this movie where I don't know any of them, and I don't know if they are these. I don't even know. Well, you can tell me later, but if they're made up for the movie specifically.
Yeah, these ones definitely are.
But I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. Like I was right there with them already. I didn't need all this backstory.
Right,
It was really well done in that. So I thought this was really great.
I would have to say I would agree that I think it's a really, really entertaining, fun movie. I really feel like, in just general thoughts here for me, I do feel like it really captures the essence and like experience of D&D. Now, obviously, you've only experienced the little bit that I did for you today, but in my experience with D&D, like what he does at the beginning, kind of saying his backstory, which is kind of like somewhat tragic. That is very much a thing for people who play D&D. Like you want your character to have, or some people want their character to have like this epic badass backstory that explains like why they are, how they are, and who they are. And like I personally thought that was a great nod to it. There are so many, obviously like not necessarily just like Easter eggs, but like kind of lore stuff peppered in through this movie. So Wizards of the Coast, who like owns Dungeons and Dragons, they were heavily involved in this film, like in the making of, I believe. I don't know to how much, to what extent, but clearly, like between them and like the people who directed this movie being huge nerds, or at least John Daly seems to be. Like they really brought in a whole lot. Like so in like we'll talk about it later, but like there's this maze section kind of battle thing, and like they brought in a displacer beast and a gelatinous cube, and there's a mimic, and like early on one of the characters, the druid, turns into an owlbear, which is a personal favorite monster of my brother and myself. We love owlbears. It's kind of we have a shared love of that, and so I think things like that are like they really add to the experience of dropping into this world and seeing these like monsters and this other stuff. And like I don't know if it came across to you. I like a lot of the cinematography in this movie.
Yeah.
There's especially at least one scene, and it's a very short shot, but it's an overhead shot of like this whole room as they're moving through it, and that is very much like people who have like a much bigger D&D setup like have this top down view of the table and like the room that they're in, and like these squares that how you move your character. So like I assume that was an intentional move on their part. So like I loved seeing that. I think that was a great just like it was a very quick shot, but it's such a great nod to those kind of things. You mentioned the movie or the music. I really liked. I feel like the music really served this movie well. There's a lot of times where like it's got like kind of an epic like battle cry or like chanting going on, or like kind of like a Celtic feel when like they're just walking along. And like it really lends itself well to the environment, because that's also something that's like a lot of like super huge like people in the D&D might have. Like I have a playlist actually on Spotify that a friend of my brother's shared with me that is just different styles of music for different areas that you might be playing in. It kind of helps add to that experience. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I think a lot of the characters. So as a general rundown, there's Edgin, played by Chris Pine, who's a bard. Holga, played by Michelle Rodriguez, who's a barbarian, or at least that's what she seems to be to me. Justice Smith, who played Simon the sorcerer. And so just as a general thing, the difference between sorcerers and wizards, by the way, sorcery is kind of like an inherent ability that you just are kind of born and like you tap into. Wizards have to study and like find things, and like a sorcerer might find like a scroll, but it's very like inherent to them. They're kind of born with it. Sophia Lillis plays Doric, the tiefling druid, which a tiefling is a kind of like half, like they have like some demonic part in their heritage, which is why like she had like the horns, and I don't know if you noticed, but she has a tail as well.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice, and I don't know if you remember, when we came out of the movie, I mentioned that I was surprised that she was like a pale, like Caucasian color. Because a lot of times in D&D, like in the Monster Manual, even like tieflings tend to be more of a reddish tint, or like blue or purple or something like that. And so, I mean, there are some that have more like palish, like Caucasian skin tone. But I was looking into the trivia, and my takeaway, the reason that they did that was because of the massive effects budget for everything else, like the monsters and stuff. So they did it to cut costs.
I see.
And that's what they came up in the trivia as well. So my suspicion was correct.
Oh, okay.
And then you have let's see, who Hugh Grant plays Forge, who is a con man. There is Zank, the paladin, Sophina, the red wizard, who's like the villain of this movie, and then there's Kira, who is Edgin's daughter. Those are the main players that we have.
Yep.
So just to kind of go through those things. So I think I've already mentioned the things that I like. Overall, I do like a lot about this movie. Shall we dive deeper into it?
Yeah, let's dive a little bit deeper.
Sweet. Okay, so kind of getting into so do you have things like what specifically did you like about like some of the scenes in this movie?
Well, what I like about some of the scenes? I mean, like you already mentioned there's several components. Like the characters I kind of already mentioned that like I just kind of like being with them.
Yeah.
And I thought this is one of my favorite roles of even Michelle Rodriguez's doing Holga. I really liked her barbarian character, and I like just the characters interacting with each other because they go through trials a little bit, and their friendships kind of don't get really tested so much, but they obviously they put a lot of maybe faith into Chris Pine's character of Edgin.
He's kind of like the de facto leader.
Yeah, he's like the de facto leader, but things don't always pan out, so they have to deal with that a little bit. But I guess overall, I just like the level of creativity and from every scene to scene, everything flowed so well. From sequence to sequence, and because the visuals were really great, and I also liked the villain, and the villain was kind of interesting. We had Hugh Grant, Forge character, I guess well, it's not like he doesn't explicitly double cross them in the beginning, but obviously he uses his situation to his benefit that really kind of screws over the rest of the team. And so there's an interesting dynamic there because they have that history of doing their adventures and thieving together. But Hugh Grant, Forge, he becomes like it goes into politics, and he gets some assumed power through that, and then he I don't know if you say he date Sophia, was it Sophina, the red wizard, has her own agenda to do, and so I feel like this is the first movie kind of like this in a while that I felt like the stakes were good, and I like there's the kind of the world ending type of it's not even like
not quite,
it's not global to me, so which is also refreshing, but but I did like, but Sophina does have she's working under a bigger, darker force too. But Sophina has her agenda, like we said. But Hugh Grant's just kind of like a pawn to her in that.
Yeah, she's definitely just using him, and like he doesn't really seem to care.
Yeah,
like he knows that she's up to something. He doesn't really know what it is, and he definitely like fears her. You can tell in his interactions with her that he's uncomfortable around her. But like he's just there to get money. That's all he wants.
Yeah. So that sets up an interesting relationship dynamic between Edgin's character and his daughter, because since Edgin had to go away to jail, he missed out on a couple years of his daughter's life, and that gave Forge enough time to kind of like what do you call it, like make her change her opinion about her own dad.
Yeah,
and like
he kind of having basically double crossed them when they were after this particular treasure. So he does agree, like in like their last moments, Edgin asks him to make sure to take care of his daughter, and he does do this, but he slowly over this last couple of years basically gaslights her into believing that her dad basically just like abandon her for riches in favor of just not caring about her. And so like he basically poisons her against him, more or less. Which is, I mean, that's definitely that's such a villainous thing to do. Like he does give her a better life, but man, he's just not a good dude at all.
You know, and I think in a movie like this, and maybe, so I know this is based on a game, but it did feel like maybe there's a couple things happening. One, it's a little, in video games, there's like, fetch quests in video games, and there's fetch quests in the movie too, technically.
Oh, yeah.
And, but what this movie does well is, like, I think a lot of movies that kind of do this type of structure of a fetch quest, it's just kind of a way to get the characters to do something. And the thing that they're fetching,
I think it was the Helm of Destruction or something like that.
I mean, so normally things like that could just be, I don't know, things. What do you call in movies when they're after the thing?
I mean, fetch quest
MacGuffin.
Like, it's like, yeah, like the thing that they have to do in order to win.
So I feel like, or MacGuffin's the thing that they just are after. They're in search of it, and so this movie does have MacGuffins, I guess.
Oh, definitely.
But I feel like it's different somehow.
It kind of subverts your expectation because, like, the helm thing that they're after, they get that, and it does help them, but it's not like it's not the deciding force that makes the toe of the battle or anything necessarily.
It's not the thing for the whole movie. It's like it's a piece of something that they need so they can get to this other thing to do the thing. But like every new MacGuffin thing they're after, kind of like, it makes sense to the growth of the characters too, because the helmet is what is Simon's?
Yeah.
So Simon's going through his own like character arc. Is directly related to the MacGuffin of the helmet.
Yeah. Sees a lot of self-doubt and doesn't really have faith in his own abilities, and like that. I mean, that's shown evidently. Like, he tries several times after they get the helm to like attune to it, and he just can't. It like kind of blows him away, and literally.
Yeah.
And so it's not really until he gets in a situation in which he has no other choice but to like defend himself and use this thing that he figures out exactly like it's basically his confidence kind of comes in, and he is able to attune to it and use it for his advantage. And that, like, I love that kind of little character arc that they do, because like he needed that, and it's nice too. Like you mentioned Michelle Rodriguez's character. One of the things I really appreciated about her character is that even as like the barbarian, which barbarians tend to not have a lot of intelligence, and it's evident in the writing of her. Like, she's not necessarily super smart, but she still has a lot of like heart and feeling, like in the way that she interacted with Edgin, and specifically with Kira, Edgin's daughter. You could tell that like she really cared about her, and that she was a part of her life and wanted to be there. And so I really appreciate about like she's not just necessarily two-dimensional.
And she did help Kira. Like, she's kind of like a surrogate mother in a sense. But what's also kind of nice about the movie is Edgin's character loses his wife in the movie, and it's told through flashbacks, and that's another theme of like loss for him. And this movie could have easily tried to force Edgin and Holga to be like a romantic item, and and they kind of like, well, it wasn't suggested, but I think some of the other characters like asked them about whether or not they are or not, and they're like, oh no, you. And they're like, gross. So I feel like this movie could have easily tried to shoehorn a love
romantic relationship
between those two, but it just doesn't. And I think that's just kind of nice, because they have other priorities to do within the story, I think. And it's just not as interesting, I think, for them to maybe get romantic. They're friends, and they care about each other, and they support each other, but in a totally different way.
And I honestly prefer that so much more than the typical romantic subplot that a lot of things, especially in fantasy films, that they try and do. Because like that's another reason, like I just love it when films subvert your expectations.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many tropes that so many movies nowadays play into, it's nice to not have those tropes. So yeah, I really appreciate about those characters, and I like the journeys that they're all on. And like you mentioned Edgin with loss, like he has to overcome that as well at the end of the film. So spoilers, if you haven't seen the film, go watch it because we're going to talk about spoilers here. So one of the things that Edgin is after, the main thing that he's after at the beginning of the film is this tablet of reawakening, I think is what it's called, which is basically like a resurrection tablet. Allows you to bring one person back from the dead. So it's only a one-use thing. And so his whole goal for getting that was to bring his wife back. And for him, like, he considers it to be like his fault because he brought in this red wizard as part of his job as a harper, I think is what it was called. And he ends up stealing some of their gold, you find out. And I guess their gold is marked in a way that other red wizards can track it. So because of that, these red wizards basically come and kill his wife. And so that's why he wants the tablet to kind of resurrect. He says it later on in the film to his daughter Kira, but like he wasn't trying to resurrect her mom; he was trying to resurrect his wife. Because I mean, he means so much more to him because she didn't really get to experience having her as a mom. And so at the end of the film, they fight off the red wizard, and one of the things that they mention is like these wizards have like some kind of knife that as soon as it like slashes you or touches you, you're basically dead because it has some kind of poison or something. And surprise, surprise. Well, I mean, it is a surprise. So Holga manages to get stabbed, and then does actually die. But in that last moment, like Edgin could see the pain on Kira's face, his daughter's face, because Holga was basically her mom. So they make the decision to bring Holga back instead. And that kind of brings about kind of the circle for Edgin to kind of like finally let it go, as it were, which I think is a really nice character arc.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that about that moment. As far as like, were there any standout moments in the movie to you?
There was a couple. There's a couple of sequences that did stand out, and one of which they are. And I'm forgetting specifics, I guess, but they're in basically a lava place.
Right, in the Underdark, yes.
What's it called?
The Underdark.
The Underdark. Okay,
yes.
So they're in the Underdark, and there's a funny sequence where they get to a bridge where they have to step on. There's a pattern where you have to step on the stone blocks of this bridge to get across. Otherwise, it will collapse and they'll fall in the lava and all die. And they have this. It was kind of interesting watching it because the character that I'm forgetting his name.
Simon.
No, that's the.
The paladin guy. Zank.
Yeah, Zank.
Yeah.
So Zank, he's going off on this monologue about how to cross the bridge and giving all these specifics, which me as a viewer, I was like, what? He's like 3 odd up, down, diagonal, and then you can have to do 2 steps sideways. And I was like, I was watching this, like, what the hell? I'm like, this is some very mathematical Indiana Jones stuff we have to go through. And then Simon
Jehovah starts with an I.
And then Simon just steps on one of the blocks, and it causes the whole bridge just to fall down. So, like, for one, it's like this movie's again ejecting humor in such a nice, smooth way. Yeah. But it also, like, I didn't really want to watch this whole thing of them crossing some bridge.
Yeah.
And then the movie just says, well, you don't have to. They just screwed up. But then Simon has to figure out a new way to cross. So I think like things like that were just really amusing to me.
Which that's totally like a D&D thing. Like if you were to try and like that's a critical failure on his part.
Oh,
like,
okay.
He would have tried to maybe take a step forward and like to test it, and then as soon as he does, like roll in that one, is like, well, you screwed up, and the bridge is collapsed now.
Yep.
Which I love that. So one of the things that they figure out how to get across, Holga's former lover, that you see, who's a halfling played by, oh my gosh, I can't.
Bradley Cooper.
Yes, by Bradley Cooper. I guess he had this staff. That she, like, Holga gave him as a walking stick.
Yeah.
But it's actually like we'll just call it kind of what a de facto is, which is a portal gun, more or less. In this case, a portal staff. that they use to basically shoot a portal here, and they basically go across, and they manage to get the helm, which is what they were down there looking for. And it leads to one of my favorite moments in the film, which I'm not like, I love D&D, but I'm not like super into the lore enough to like know certain things. And they happen to awaken the wrath of a rather portly dragon that like it basically like slides down this gigantic pile of bones, just gaping maw open, trying to eat them. Like, and he like his body is so massive he can't fly, he can barely walk. There's a part where he just literally rolls over. And like
it's a different way of looking at a dragon.
Oh,
this
definitely.
one's been eating well.
Oh, for sure. Like, and it's not something you see very often. Like, I've never seen a portrayal of a dragon that's just like so fat that he just literally can't do anything.
In fact, one of its main attacks is it's rolling. It's just rolling because it can't lunge at you, it can't crawl on you, so it's just rolling at people.
Beyond that, and like its fire breath, it's such a fun sequence. And you were telling me, and I didn't catch it. There's a pretty blatant Jurassic Park moment, right?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a screen comparison on YouTube, or if someone needs to make that, I bet someone will. But there's a part where they're jumping across, either jumping or falling. I don't remember specifically, but Holga, Holga gets she's hanging on the ledge of the bridge, and the dragon like falls underneath her.
Oh, right.
And it falls onto its backside, and it looks up at her. They're trying to pull her up, and then it rolls onto its all fours, and then just as it jumps to snap at her, they pull her up over that bridge. And that sequence it's beat for beat from the first Jurassic Park movie when they're pulling Lex into the air shaft, the air vent, as the Velociraptor is
snapping,
falls down, and then jumps back up at her and then she escapes right in the last second. So I picked up on that shot's like frame for frame, like from Jurassic Park. So and that was just that one little sequence that I caught. So I liked the little callback to that.
Oh, that's cool.
So I thought,
especially as a big Jurassic Park movie fan, like that's like your favorite movie.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. So I thought I was happy to see that.
That's awesome. I think one of the stand-up moments for me, and I will admit that there's a thing nowadays, and like I've complained about it on one of our previous podcasts where we were talking about Marvel movies with the humor, but I do think the humor in this movie kind of lends itself better to the situation. Like, it's not necessarily every other word, or, every other phrase, but there's a moment where they're trying to get information about where the helm is, and they go into this graveyard to talk to dead people who happen to like be around when it was first, like when it was lost.
Yeah,
and they end up so the thing that Simon has, this little thing that allows you to talk to the dead, you can ask it like 5 questions in this movie, and after they answer them, they just fall dead again. And they ask the first guy, and they screw up, and they were talking to each other and are asking each other questions, and they happen to accidentally go through all 5 questions, and it just dies without giving them really any information. So then it goes into this sequence where they're having to ask all these different corpses that they have to dig up themselves every time, and all of them have like just a small little piece of information. Like, one of them didn't even have any information, that he died because he slipped and like hit himself on a bathtub.
Yeah. I like that the movie in that sequence took the time to just they like thought of like funny scenarios, and they just like, you know what, let's do them all.
I mean, that's a very D&D thing to do.
And like they were all so funny and unique. But the guy's falling, slipping, and hitting his head. I mean, they could have easily cut that for time, but like I'm glad that they had that movie. And there's some sequences that I think are just, they're all funny. They're just so funny. Even in each new sequence that they do gives them just a little bit more information they need. But one of my favorites was when they were talking to the one guy, and as he was given the helmet, and he said, well, I had the helmet, but then I don't remember if he suddenly couldn't remember, but because he couldn't remember because at that moment he got like sliced in half.
Oh yeah.
And so then they cut back to Chris Pine's character, and then they removed more of the coffin lid off, and then he was cut in half. He doesn't remember. He only remembers up
Right.
to a certain point because then he died in a horrible way or something. And I just like the movie and the editing, and that stood out to me.
Yeah.
Because it just they made it so funny and they kept it all.
Yeah.
And it did service the story
Yes.
very well. I mean, because they're asking fallen soldiers basically, and they each had their own unfortunate end that they were trying to get through.
Which fun fact about that. So I was reading up on this movie, and apparently, initially the directors wanted those to be voiced by the members of Monty Python. Because this movie, I guess the directors are also like bits of this movie are kind of also influenced by Python. And so they wanted those characters to be voiced by them, and the graveyard ones. And they ended up, for whatever reason, not doing that, in part because several members of Monty Python are now gone, unfortunately. And I think they may not have reached out, or something fell through. So that didn't happen. So they ended up getting an Australian sketch writing group, which I guess must have been very popular. I'm not familiar with them, but I think it was called Auntie Donna is the name of them. So I may have to look them up. But so they ended up being the ones who voiced all the dead soldiers. So I kind of want to look those up and see what's up with that. But as far as like some of my other favorite standout moments from this movie, I really like the maze sequence that they get put into.
Yeah.
There's just so much. Like, not only do they have a Displacer Beast, which is a really iconic monster from D&D, and I love seeing that being there. But there is a nod. I mentioned the D&D cartoon earlier. They actually have a nod to them in that sequence. One of the other groups that you see, and it's one of the ones that like you see this little kind of short kid or whatever that has like kind of like the horned helmet. Pulls out like it's either a sword or a double-bladed axe. That's one of the members of those characters from the D&D cartoon.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's a great nod to that.
Cool.
For friends for either fans or non-fans who maybe are now going to watch it. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I just think the sequence looks great. That's also where they have the mimic, which anybody who's experienced fantasy stuff, either in D&D or like Dark Souls, mimics often disguise themselves as chests, and if you come across one, they will try to eat you. And so I love the way it looks. I think it looks great. And then so that was one of my other favorite sequences. And then we were laughing about this earlier today, the failed illusion moment.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're trying to break to get into the tournament or the thing. And Simon is casting this illusion of Edgin, Chris Pine's character, just walking in and singing a tune with his lute, and it goes great until he accidentally like gets his foot caught, and then it goes horribly wrong, and like the illusion starts like almost like deflating, to a degree, and like the eyes are getting really big, and it's looping like a broken record. Like that was one of the moments. Like there were several times where I laughed out loud, but I think that was like the biggest one where I couldn't help myself. It was just like, what the hell is happening right now? What is going on?
Yeah, that's like one of those moments where they just like, this thing would be really funny. Might not look like the rest of the movie. Let's do it anyway because it's funny.
Yeah.
That moment was like, what is going on?
Yeah, it was also kind of like a Looney Tunes moment, almost, to a degree.
A little bit
to me, but I thought that part was really funny, and I enjoyed that. One thing I think is really interesting, and that I really appreciate about this. So Simon the sorcerer, if you notice, like all of his spells incorporate like hand movements. So I was watching an interview that he did, and evidently all of those movements that he does with his hands is American Sign Language. So he specifically, I guess he speaks a little bit of sign language for whatever reason, and he really wanted to have, something for those audience members who like still enjoy D&D and stuff. So if you speak ASL or are fast enough to catch it, the movements that he does explain what the spell is that he's doing.
Interesting.
Which is a super neat detail. Like he didn't have to do that as an actor, and I think that that's such a great addition.
That's really interesting. I've actually, on a side note of that, I've seen a lot of sign being used in movies lately, and which
Well,
has
like
been
Quiet Place was a big one for
Quiet
that.
Place was a big one. You haven't seen John Wick 2, but
No.
there is a character in that does sign. I don't think the sign is as good in that. I mean, they're taking some liberties with sign in
Gotcha.
John Wick 2, but there's a character that does sign. And then I didn't know that he was doing sign in that movie. I didn't put that together, but that's an interesting little detail to add in there. And
Yeah.
and I'm glad that movies are having sign in there. So because a lot of people do sign,
Yeah.
so that's always neat to see characters with some kind of a disability be represented in that kind of way. So very charming to
Yes,
have that.
absolutely. And it's something like I really do wish a lot more people would, or more movies would kind of lean into that because it is very much. I mean, it's something that's used widely all over the world. I mean, it's I mean, I don't know the history of like human communication, but like gestures and like body language are just as important as a way of communicating. So the fact that we have the ability to have the American Sign Language is really impressive. And I know a few things only like here or there because actually back when I was in high school I played a character that had to speak in sign language to another character occasionally, which was interesting. So I had learned for that, which I've forgotten the majority of it. But like my folks and I, we've always like one of the main symbols that I always remember is this, which means love. So like anytime we leave each other, we often do this as we're walking away. Or like when I was really young and we were in church, they taught us this, which is the sign for going to the bathroom. So like instead of like saying it out loud, we would look at them and just go to let them know that we had to go. So like it's a handy thing to know. But anyway, I really think that like that's such a great inclusion to this movie.
Yeah.
And I love that he did that.
So would you say do you think the story of this movie, do you think that could have come about from playing a round of D&D? Do you think that the directors and screenwriter played a game of D&D and that this story could have happened in some way?
I think to a certain degree, yeah, you could definitely do that. I mean, I don't know if this one specifically. I'm sure that they had a writer team that was coming up with ideas, but it's certainly possible that like that the encounters that they went through, like the corpse thing and the illusion deal, like maybe they tried to play that out with D&D, like actual do rolls to see whether or not it would be successful. That would be a fun way to do it, to see if it actually works or not, and to or like those badass moments, like doing all those fights where Holga is just kicking serious ass. Like if that was something that they role played or just wrote it to be like, and she just does this incredibly well. I would be interesting, or I would be interesting. I would love if I were interesting. I would be interested in seeing a movie that, or like a short that was based entirely off of just the improvisational thing. Which actually, if you're a fan at all of Critical Role, which is a huge deal on the internet, like they're in their third season right now. Held by Matt Mercer and a lot of these other voice actors who've done like cartoons and stuff. Their first campaign, Vox Machina, they started with crowdfunding it or kickstarting it to try and get an animated version of it, and enough that they've got, I think, a third season about to come up. They just dropped season 2 not that long ago, and they've got enough. I think it's Titmouse is the studio that's animating it, and they got enough support that Amazon picked it up. So it's through Amazon now. And so they've got 2 seasons. I think there's going to be a third. And they've even ordered like their second season, which is deals with the Mighty Nine, or what their group is called. They've even ordered a season of that. And that was entirely based off of like this campaign that Matt Mercer DM'd. Like they were following the D&D rules and stuff, but the story is whatever Matt has in mind, and all the interactions and stuff are improv. So they did take the main story beats that happened in that and funny moments and translated it to the animated show. So it's already kind of been done in that way. So if you haven't seen it, it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay,
I highly recommend it. I think it's a great time.
Cool. Well, what do you think? So should we give this movie a rating?
I think we should. Before we do that, I will say one other thing that I really like, and maybe this is just me. I don't know if you felt this. There are moments, and maybe it's just because it's high fantasy, that this there were moments where it felt like an 80s fantasy movie to me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, and there's plenty of those, like, I mean, Legend or I can't remember the name of it. It's like something.
Well, even
something
Willow,
Hawk.
even something like Willow.
Yeah. Willow's another right
is,
one.
is it Lady Hawk? Maybe.
Yes, that's it. Lady Hawk. Man, that's a throwback. Oh man. I can't remember his name now. The tall blonde guy, who's also in Blade Runner.
Yeah, I can't either.
But he's in that movie. Yeah, Lady Hawk. Oh man, Lady Hawk. That's a movie. Yeah, it just has elements that feel like that almost environment to me, and maybe that's just a high fantasy. But yeah, I think we should go ahead and give this movie a rating. So on our scale, we have avoid, meh, solid, great, and superb. So Devin, what would you rate this movie?
Well, let's see. I went into this with I didn't have low expectation. I just had I just like I'm not because I wasn't really big into Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know if that was going to bog down explaining stuff. I heard good things about it going into it, but I thought it was so funny. The humor was just one of the funnier movies I've seen in a long time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the action was very good. The visual effects, I liked the villain in the movie. Anyway, so I would give this movie a superb, actually.
Interesting.
So, and I was not expecting that going into it. I thought it would probably be okay or good or at least entertaining.
Yeah.
But I would like from the get go with the humor and stuff. I was like, this is pretty a fun movie, and it's like they prioritized fun for everything about this movie, and I just really enjoyed every character too. Michelle Rodriguez's character, Justin Smith, Sophia Lillis's Hugh Grant was funny to see in this.
Yeah.
And everyone else who I might have not mentioned, but it's rare to see a movie where every character is like pretty stand out and they have their own role to play. Because there's just been a lot of movies where a lot of characters are just not interesting. I've seen like the Jurassic World movies, and there's like, I don't know, 2 or maybe even 1 interesting character in most of those movies, and that's a huge franchise film. There's just like, what's the reason for this? But a movie like this, everything seems like top tier on every measurement of a movie, and so I think 2023 is starting off pretty good. We had a good movie with John Wick 4 and now this, and so I can't wait to see what else is coming out this year. So I rate it a superb.
Nice. I think for myself, as much as I love this movie, and I thought it was I thought it was very entertaining. There's a lot I like about it. I have nothing negative to say about it. But I think I'm gonna give it just a great.
Wow.
And I can't put my finger on it. I guess I can't explain it. But as much as I had a fun time, I'm not absolutely blown away.
Tim, they made this movie just for you.
I know, and I feel bad as a nerd, as someone who enjoys D&D, who has played D&D, and going into this movie, I love a lot of the stuff about it. But there's just something about it that I left the theater as an enjoyable experience, and I do want to watch it again to kind of re-experience it. But there's just something about it, like maybe it's because a lot of things were spoiled from the trailers or something. Because I'm starting to get to a point where I don't want to watch trailers anymore, or at least beyond like the teaser, because there's a habit in Hollywood right now of giving away too many big moments in trailers, and I think it's unfortunate. But I went into it and I liked it, and I want to watch it again, but there are things that I'm like, I wish I were blown away like I was with Everything Everywhere All at Once or Triple R. Like, those movies are like, they're so out there, and they're so wild, and there's so much going on that I don't know. Maybe I guess I wanted more of that. I'm not sure. Maybe I've been spoiled by seeing those movies. But it's also one of those things that, like I said, I can't put my finger on it. But I like it. I think it's great. I think you should go see it. Whether or not, clearly someone who's not experienced in D&D liked this movie a lot. I think that says a lot about the quality of it. When I checked last on Rotten Tomatoes, it was rated extremely highly by both critics and audiences. It was in the 90s for both of those. And I think as someone who's a D&D fan, I think you will also love this movie. So I think in general, it's a great film that a lot of people will like. But there's just something that doesn't quite do it for me. So I would give it a rating of great. But like I said, I have nothing negative to say about it other than just that's the feeling I have.
Well, great still means great, I guess.
Yeah, it's still really, I mean, it's above a solid for me. Like it's very worth seeing.
I do think like this movie could have easily been a little more by the numbers, and I thought they really elevated the material in a very charming way. I was just pleasantly surprised, and I think I just wish, I hope that like Marvel and some other of these big studios take a look at this movie and just and know that the risk they're not taking, their risks do not sacrifice the story, like
right.
and or the characters. It's just a good package of all the things that you would want to go and see a good movie and be entertained by. And I'm looking forward to like showing it to some my other friends and family that they won't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, but after watching it, they really don't need to know anything. It wouldn't be any different than watching any other fantasy something. Like fantasy films have fantasy type language and whatever, and so I don't think it matters too much to know the.
It feels like it's a movie that's definitely accessible.
Yeah,
to anybody.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the story beats in there, I think, could attract a wide audience and have a lot of people like. There's a lot to like in here, and do
you think you'll see it in theaters again?
In theaters, no. I mean, I rarely see movies twice in theaters unless it just I can't even. I don't even know what movie I would have watched twice in theaters. I know there was something, but
I think the last thing that I saw twice in theaters was Revenge of the Sith, and the second time was mostly because a friend of mine hadn't seen it, and so he wanted to go, and so we went again with him. Which, as I recall, I didn't want to go back to see it again in theaters. Like I liked it, but like I didn't really want to go back and sit for 3 hours.
But I'll definitely watch this movie again from the comfort of my house,
on your nice big TV.
That's right. So maybe not the theater again. I mean, you'd have to have like something like The Matrix or something for me to like want to watch that again. But in the theater at least. But no, I'll look forward to watching this again though at home. But I'm glad I got to see it in the theater though. That was a good experience. So
yeah, I would agree. Like I said, I enjoyed it, and I think it's worth watching. So I think that just about wraps it up for today's episode.
That's right.
And we will be back next week with another episode. So see you then.